Hello, BookTube. I'm here with a book tag. I was tagged by Steve Donoghue in the supermarket shopping book tag. It was an original tag done by Jason Harrigan at Byways in Bookland. There are 11 prompts, and let's get to it. Number one, list. Before going book shopping, including virtually, do you have a list? Yes and no. I have a list in my sort of head of areas that I do collect and want more of, but I don't sort of proactively look a lot of times for that. Um, when I shop online, I do have a list because I usually am targeting a specific book, looking for it, and so forth. So I do have a list in that way. I used to have more lists. I used to carry around a list with me. That was when I was collecting a lot of science fiction anthologies and so forth. Uh, there literally hundreds, or if not thousands, of them, and a lot of them were series by a certain editor or editors. And sometimes it was difficult to keep track of what I had or what I don't have. So a lot of times I put down what I had, and the stories were overlapping a lot of times with other ones. So I would have the story many times over, which, wasn't too much of a concern for me. It was more the introductions that I was interested in and the prefaces of those. And that's where I would collect, or I was collecting a certain author, and I wanted to see, I wanted to get everything that that author was in. And there was a couple authors like Clifford Simak that was that way. And nowadays, there are two things that I should have a list of what I have, because they are sort of getting away from me, and I have occasionally bought a duplicate. Um, it's a series called Britain in Pictures. There's like 130 or 140. They're slim little books. I've got, I don't know, maybe 70, 80. I haven't actually counted them and gone through. And I collect them only with the dust jackets, and they occasionally show up. And for a while, I kept straight exactly. I knew what I had and what I didn't have, and the condition and so forth. But lately, well, my memory going, I suppose, as well, and getting more, I am unsure of what I have. When I look and I go, okay, I'm not sure if I've got that one because I may have seen it several times, but without the dust jacket. So memory's playing tricks on me. So I need a list to say what I have, and then the condition of the dust jacket, because some of them are a bit rough. So I would, if I found a better dust jacket and the price was good, then I'd upgrade to it. Simple. And the other one is BT Batsford. I did a shelf tour of the BT Batsfords that I have. I more or less have 3 shelves full, and it would be the same reason there that I'm getting more, and the condition, because some of the jackets aren't the best of condition. So definitely, if I saw something in a nice pristine dust jacket, then I would snap it up very quickly. Um, but yeah, otherwise I go into the bookshop and I look at the areas that I generally am interested in to see what's new on the shelf, or revisit something else that I saw there before, or something I had recently read that I go, oh, I wonder if he's got something on that subject or author, whatever. And then there is the bargain section, which I go through sort of routinely every time I go there, because sometimes I miss stuff previously, or with new stuff going in, and there's always surprises. There's always surprises in every area that I pick up something that I wasn't expecting. And there's areas that I look at in that bookshop that I normally wouldn't go to. However, I do find that there's occasionally interesting books that are a surprise to me, and I enjoy that. So I don't go through like every section, every book, every time I'm in there. I go through the main sections that I normally would, and then I go through a couple of the other ones, and then the next visit I switch that over to a couple of the other ones that I normally wouldn't look at regularly. So after a while, I get a covering of what's there. So obviously I will miss stuff, but I don't know every book that there is in existence. And I've seen a lot of the stuff over the years, but there's always surprises for me, which is really nice. Um, Number two. Oh, that took a while for number one. Number two, fruit and veg. Good for the body and mind. Recommend a book you felt improved your physical or mental health. I don't really have anything that I can think that with, other than like any book that makes me feel, that I enjoy reading, and that sort of improves my mental health for sure. Physical health wise, would be probably cookbooks. Mark Richardson showed a cookbook there, and I would concur with that. I don't have any cook. Well, I've got a couple cookbooks. I've got something like a Tudor cookbook, or a few other things like that, which aren't quite cookbooks to use to better your health at the moment. But I used to have some 10 years ago or so before I moved into here. Um, and it's also difficult because I do have a shared kitchen, and it's difficult to actually do some cooking. So I never got back into that. But I should get a cookbook or two and start doing something. So number three, tin goods. Regardless of the label on the can, the contents are all too often bland. What's your tin can genre? Now, Jason picked a genre that he likes to read, and he does read, even though he realizes that they're sort of all the same. He does read historical fiction, but he feels that they are very bland with that. And I will sort of do the same. The other two that I've seen picked genres that they don't read because they think it's too bland. To me, a bland genre is crime fiction. It's to me they're all the same pretty well. It's the same story. Something happened, a crime, murder, whatever, investigation. Generally, there's variation, but it's within a sphere, and it's within a. It could be over at one end of the sphere and then back. It's to me that they are very, very um, bland, but I enjoy them. I've begun to enjoy them, I should say, because up until approximately 5 years, 6 years ago, I never read too much of the crime fiction. I enjoyed watching them on TV. I enjoyed watching series and films. Enjoyed them immensely. But then I needed something else. I wanted something else that was sort of light to read. So I thought, well, let's look at these, and I found some that I really, really liked. So I'm starting to go back and read the old classics of crime fiction. Not always the big names, which I do want to get to eventually. But I've been able to get a few series of publications that will keep me for quite a while, and plus a lot of other modern stuff that I've picked up that sounds interesting. We'll get to one of those a bit later from remainder shops. This is the British Library has done British Library crime classics, and I've got approximately 40 or 50 of them. I think I bought them as a lot from a bookseller, and they were all brand new. Usually they were sealed up in plastic as well for a number of them. I think there were 4 or 5 at a time when they released that sort of series part of it. But yeah, I got them all for less than £2 each, so I couldn't pass that up. They're all uniform. They all have this look with some really great artwork on the cover, and I don't know how many they expect to have with them. And the reason why I say that is because there is a book that's put out as the 100 Crime Classics by the editor, and it's by the library, the British Library. I think it's trying to see who not sure if the overall editor is the Martin Edwards, but there's an overall editor of these, and he's done a book 100. So I'm assuming they have they will end at 100. I'm not sure, but they should be up to almost 80 by now. I think, in the 70s or 80s. Uh, and they've also done two other series, which I do want to get. They started a science fiction one. They're not too far in on that. They started up a weird fiction sort of slash horror, which I do want to get. And yeah, and another series here is Collins. They used to have a Collins Crime. I don't know how many they published during the 20s and 30s and 40s and onward. It's hundreds and hundreds. I know that. But Collins decided to do a reprint, Collins Crime Club, and they've done them in hardcover with the original pulp jackets. And I've probably got about 20 some of these because I just picked them up really cheap. The cover price is $9.99, so it's more or less paperback. The British Library Crime Classic cover price is $8.99, so there's not much difference. And these are hardcover, not the best made hardcovers, but they're nice, they're solid, and they have I'm assuming the original covers with the original artwork, so that's what I really like in the dust jacket. And they range. There's Agatha Christie mixed up in here. There is what's his name, Wallace. I can't remember his first name, which I like. Sort of thriller, but crime as well. So yeah, so that's the one that I think it is kind of bland, but I enjoy them. I really enjoy them. It's the same story, but I enjoy how the author goes about getting to the end. Let me see. 4 is meat slash fish counter, prepared by a skilled butcher, fishmonger, just how you want it. Tell us about a book that you felt was written just for you. I can't think of anything that specifically fits that, because the things that I'm interested in, I guess the biggest things are sort of archaeology. Have always been books, collecting books, and film, silent film, and classic film. So if there was a novel that had all those in there somehow meshed together into a great story, then I probably could feel that that book was written for me. But I have yet to find anything. Number 5, baked goods. Bread is the staple of many around the world. Who is an author you can easily digest at any time of the day? Now, that would be my John Clare. He is a poet. He's a romantic poet. He first published in 1820. So this year, in January was the 100th anniversary, 200th anniversary of his publication of his first book. Now, this is the Oxford World Classics. This is the major works, and I had always carried this around when I was more outward bound, like when I was on the bus and anywhere. I'd always carry this with me, and it's great because it's always, if you got a few minutes, you can open it up somewhere and read a poem, and it doesn't take much, just a few minutes to read a poem. And yeah, sometimes reading poetry, you want to be in silence and quiet, but I found this just so relaxing, and just to read this anywhere, just have something to pass the time rather than just sit there and twiddle my thumbs. So John Clare would be it. I can read it anytime. I can read it in the morning, over breakfast, anywhere. Number 6, chilled section. Recommend a cool new author or book you've recently discovered. Well, there's a couple actually. There's one that I'm doing as a reading for. Oh, there it is. And it's a book collector. It's a book collector that lived and collected in the late 1800s and early 20th century. He died in 1940. And his name is A. Edward Newton. And I've had a book for quite a while by him. And I just never looked at it because it was something that I picked up for very cheap, for £1 or £2. And for some reason I decided to look at it, and I thoroughly enjoyed his style of writing and his wit. He is a product of his time, so not everything his views of society or people or things are going to be, mesh with ours. But that's always going to happen, and yeah, you have to overlook that, especially if it's not overbearing in here and it's just in passing, as it is most of the time. But I do love his wit, his sarcasm at times towards certain things. Um, and yeah, and I like this one here, the amenities of book collecting. I am reading on. I'm reading right through it on video. So, and it's every other day that I'm reading a chapter of him, and so I really enjoy him. He's a new old writer for me that I've discovered. Another one is going back to the crime genre was something that I bought from a bunch of remainders from a company that was going out of business, and they were dirt cheap. And there were three of them. They're basically the Vinyl Detective. And I'd never heard of this before. I never heard of the author, Andrew Cartmel. And I'll just read from the back here because like this book was I found it just a romp and really fun. He is a record collector, a connoisseur of vinyl, hunting out rare and elusive LPs. Some end up on his turntable, some are sold at a handsome profit, and all sound a hell of a lot better than any digital recording. His business card describes him as the vinyl detective, and certain people take this more literally than others, like the mysterious woman who wants to pay him a huge sum of money to find a priceless lost recording on behalf of a wealthy, shadowy, and somewhat sinister client. Given that he's just about to run out of cat food, this gets our hero's full attention. So begins a dangerous odyssey in search of the rarest jazz record of them all. And it takes him on a journey through sort of London, his haunts of haunting charity shops, looking in through the records, especially vinyl collectors, and death, and other collectors, weird and wonderful people all over the place. And I just thoroughly enjoyed it, and it's steeped with sort of, if you ever were a vinyl collector and you like vinyl, you'll learn a few things in here that you may not have known about vinyl, and then he'll be talking about things that you go, yes, you shake your head at. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. I've got three. There was a fourth one that was written. This was 2016 by who published it? Titan Books. And in 2017, he wrote another in 2018. And last year, one came out in the middle of the year. I assume there might be another one this year. But there's at least four of them, as far as I know. And I thoroughly enjoyed. Let's see here. Number 7. Frozen section. Tell us about a book that gave you the shivers. I'm sort of like Steve Donoghue. Horror has never scared me. I enjoy it. I enjoy watching horror, and but I like the supernatural horror. To me, horror has to be supernatural. If it is, if it's a slasher or a murder thing, to me that's not horror. But anyway, that's a different argument. But I have never been scared. It has never really scared me, even when I was a child. And I read quite a bit of horror when I was younger. Nothing really scared me. I think the only thing that would sort of give me chills now is reading like stuff about Trump or our Boris Johnson here. That gives me the chills because I know where it's going. Number 8, beers, wine, spirits. Name one of the first books you read that made you feel like an adult. I think most everybody has chosen that I've seen so far as sort of ones that are sort of with adult situations, sexual, and that's an easy go-to. But I I think that I could think of something else. When I was like 12, 13, I first read um, Joseph Conrad's Lord Jim. And I think that sort of taught me and solidified the fact that, you got to stand your ground. Your word means something. And to be an adult, your word means something. You should mean something. Yes, he's taken it, a lot further and romanticized it in many ways, but that's besides the point. It's that you need to stand for something, and your word needs to mean something. Um, 9. Sweets and candy. Which genre author is your indulgence when you need a little treat read? Now, to me, now we're going back to, at the moment, it's crime fiction. That's the one I go back to at the moment. Prior to that, when I first came to England here for probably a good 10 years, was P.G. Wodehouse, which had been for many years prior as well. But I just used him solely and nothing else. Prior to that, in Canada, for a long time, for most of my life, was science fiction. And for some reason, I got away from that. Well, I don't have the books anymore, so I needed something else. And then I found the Everyman Library were doing the P.G. Wodehouse when I came to England. So I concentrated on that. So I started buying those and reading them. And now, about 5 or 6 years ago, I wanted something else. I have always enjoyed, as I said, watching crime and mysteries, but I read very few, and so I took some out of the library with the few times that I've ever taken something out of the library where I live here, um, and I enjoyed them. I enjoyed what I read, and I thought, yeah, I can get into this, and I need to go back and read some of the older ones as well. Hence, getting this list, or the series, and a bunch of other stuff. I probably have. I have enough probably to keep me for a long time, about 150 books or more that I haven't read yet. But there's still more I want. Like I want to get all of Agatha Christie's. I want to get Niall Marsh. The name goes on that I don't have any of those. So eventually, I hope to have those. So I have a lot to sort of pull off. It's like Jason Harrigan said. It's like you have a whole bunch of stuff. He's got the weird fiction, and you just sort of pull something off, and you indulge yourself for a little while. And that's what I like to have, is a lot of stuff like that. So I have a lot of choice from. If I want to read a Victorian mystery, boom, I've got that. If I want to read Agatha Christie, I've got that. Well, when I do get it, that is. But yeah, so that's my go-to. That's my treat read. Number 10, magazine stand. If you read magazines / journals regularly, share some of the titles with us. Well, I don't read as many as I used to. I currently read the London magazine quite regularly. Regularly as can be. It's got short fiction, short stories, essays, book reviews, poetry. It's everything, and it's a lot to do with London. They've been for a long time having a London series in here. Just a little brief, and they're mostly every time magnificent. Different writers, but magnificent. It's an old magazine. It was started in 1732. John Clare even published in here, and the bookseller Taylor was his publisher, and was also a publisher of Keats and so forth. So there's a lot of history that's behind this. I used to get routinely as well the Times Literary Supplement. I got it sort of regularly for the last like 2 years, but it's lapsed now because when last before Christmas there was a few problems, so I cut my subscription to it, which I want to get back to it, but there seems to be a problem. I just have to sort something out with them with that. But anyway, and I've been reading it since I've been here in the UK pretty well, off and on. When I first started getting it, I had the feeling that I had to read it from cover to cover, and I found that was a little too much to do, because at the same time I was getting the London Review books, and I was doing the other things. I was working, I was writing, I was doing all this other stuff, and I just found it a lot to do, and I found that I never got around to doing it, and I berated myself for it. And I thought, well, why am I paying for this? I'm not reading it all the way through. And then in the last couple, I just realized, well, I don't need to read it all the way through. There's going to be items in there that I'm not interested in. So every time I got it, I just flip through and I go, oh yeah, that looks interesting. That looks interesting. That essay, that review, oh that looks interesting, and just did it that way. And then I started at the back page and read towards the front. That's how I did it every single time for some reason. Um, and yeah, so and it basically allowed me a window into some new stuff, into some areas that I'm interested in, and be aware that those books are available. Because I don't haunt new bookshops, or even if I did, most of that stuff I wouldn't see unless I was in Oxford and Blackwell's or something like that, or some of the higher end ones in London. But here, you would never see any of those books on the shelves, so I would not get to know about them. I no longer get catalogs. When I had a bookshop in Canada, I used to get all the catalogs from university presses, and I loved that. I loved getting the catalogs, so I knew exactly what was out there all the time, and what was coming out, and I really enjoyed that. But yeah, so this was sort of a way to supplement that, but I have to get back into it. I used to, and I haven't for quite a while. It was when I was more actively going out to shops many years ago, before sort of several illnesses had set in. When I was more mobile, I would pick up occasionally archaeology. There was several archaeology magazines. There's British Archaeology. There was a General Archaeology magazine. Um, Biblical archaeology. There's an Egyptology one that I used to get occasionally. And I also used to buy on a monthly, it was the Book and Magazine Collector. It was a small digest, low magazine, stapled, and it was a general publication, but I really enjoyed it because each month they highlighted an author and sort of collecting, and it never was usually, high end stuff, like, it was medium of the road material, and it was always accessible. Nothing, really detailed, but it was enjoyable. It was a quick, easy read, and that has gone out of publication. But yeah, and there was a few other, but the mainstream magazines I just never have found myself interested in. Once upon a time, I used to subscribe to National Geographic, and I enjoyed that. I used to have a huge run of National Geographic magazines. I had hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands. I had probably every magazine from like 1950 to like late 80s at one time, and then a huge amount from the 1900s to the teens, 20s, 30s, and 40s. But yeah, so and I stopped getting those for some reason, and now with the new changeover and stuff, I don't think there's much interest in me with those anymore. There was, yeah, there's just but the general ones I just don't really care for too much, and I haven't bothered with them. But I always would leaf through stuff like collector ones, and Mark Richardson showed up one there. I think it's called Fine Books and Collectibles, I think it is. I'm gonna have to look at that. I've never seen that magazine before. So anyway, now that's number 10. Number 11 is Checkout. Time to go home and unpack. Tag some shoppers on their way in. Now, I'm going to tag Alan Braswell, Faith at Faith in Books, Amy at the Dusty Bookshelf, David Murphy, and James Holder. So that's 5 in total, and I hope everybody has a good rest of the weekend. Take care, BookTube.